The world had almost forgotten about John Bolton. Once Trump's fiery national security advisor, now he was just another talking head on late-night TV, confidently dissecting Trump's political future. Cameras loved him. He spoke with the smug calm of a man who believed he had escaped the storm unscathed. But storms don't forget, and neither does Donald Trump. When Bolton laughed during a televised interview, dismissing Trump's latest legal maneuver as the desperate antics of a man cornered by his own lies, something shifted. That clip reached Mar-a-Lago before the show even ended. Trump was silent at first, watching Bolton's smirk freeze mid-sentence on the plasma screen. Then, without a word, he lowered his Diet Coke, leaned back, and muttered only one thing to his aide. "He thinks he's safe. Let's fix that." No one in the room spoke. They'd seen that look before, the quiet, methodical version of Trump. The one who didn't tweet, the one who planned. Outside, the Florida sky cracked with thunder. Inside, the former president's phone buzzed with notifications from loyalists, lawyers, operatives, and influencers who owed him favors. Within hours, a network began to hum beneath the surface. Something was coming. Bolton had no idea that his offhand joke had just woken up the most dangerous kind of revenge, patient revenge. By morning, the revenge didn't look like fireworks. It looked like a calendar. 3 quiet meetings added to Trump's schedule, all in bland rooms with no cameras, a media fixer in Miami, a former DOJ official who preferred the back entrance, and a cyber research firm that never put its name on contracts. No rants, no truth social storms, just a chessboard sliding into place. The first move was narrative. Clips of Bolton's smirk were sliced into 7-second loops and fed to influencers who spoke in baritone certainty. "Arrogance has a cost," they intoned over slow zooms on Bolton's face. The second move was paper. A polite letter, 3 paragraphs, immaculate punctuation, requested records from 2 think tanks that had cut Bolton checks after his tell-all book tour. The third move was pressure, a leak that wasn't a leak, a rumor seeded in the right inboxes that a foreign consulting relationship might surface soon. Bolton kept moving like a man in sunlight. He filmed another interview, joked about mustaches and missiles, signed a bookplate with the same steady hand that had signed memos marked secret. His staff noticed the change first, emails pinging from unfamiliar domains, a reporter asking oddly specific questions about an old trip to Ankara, a podcast host canceling without explanation. Bolton shrugged. "It'll pass," he said, pouring coffee that trembled almost imperceptibly. In Palm Beach, Trump reviewed a 2-page brief, margins packed with dates and footnotes. He tapped one line twice. "Right here," he said. He thought that dinner was forgettable. The aide nodded. A photograph, blurry, distant, showed Bolton at a round table with a European lobbyist whose clients rarely passed background checks. The storm wasn't coming with thunder. It was rising like tidewater, silent, relentless, patient, curling around Bolton's ankles while he kept telling himself the floor was dry. 2 days later, Washington woke to a headline that no one could trace. It wasn't in a major paper. It started small, a mid-tier political blog with a knack for timing. Sources suggest former national security advisor linked to unregistered foreign talks. No names, no proof, just suggestion, like smoke without visible fire. But in D.C., smoke is never ignored. Cable producers picked it up before sunrise. By 8 a.m., #Bolton Files was trending. By noon, reporters were calling his office, their tones half accusation, half curiosity. Bolton's assistant tried to sound calm when she said, "We have no comment at this time." But her fingers shook as she hung up. Bolton scanned the headline with disbelief. "Unregistered foreign talks," he scoffed. "They're reaching." But the unease in his chest betrayed him. He knew which dinner they were talking about, the one in Brussels, the one with a lobbyist whose name he couldn't quite remember. He hadn't signed anything, hadn't agreed to anything. But in politics, perception is paperwork. Trump, meanwhile, watched the coverage unfold from his golf course office, every network echoing the same phrase, "under scrutiny." He smiled, teeth sharp behind the sunlight. "They always eat their own," he muttered. That afternoon, a second blow landed, this one deliberate. A leaked memo surfaced, stamped, confidential, detailing Bolton's post-White House consulting fees. The numbers weren't illegal, but they were ugly. They painted greed, arrogance, hypocrisy, everything Trump's followers already loved to hate. Reporters flooded Bolton's driveway. He tried to joke with them, tried to pivot to policy talk, but the words fell flat. That night, he turned off the TV. For the first time in years, John Bolton didn't feel like the one holding the briefing room, he felt like the target of it. And somewhere in Florida, Trump's phone lit up with a message from his aide. Phase 1 complete. By the fourth day, Bolton had stopped answering his phone. The air in his townhouse felt heavy, filled with the hum of muted televisions. He watched himself replayed in slow motion on news loops, every smirk now framed as arrogance, every pause treated as guilt. Former officials under question, one anchor said, voice dripping with intrigue. He lowered the volume but couldn't mute the echo in his mind. Meanwhile, in Mar-a-Lago, the planning room glowed with the soft light of laptop screens. Trump sat at the head of the table, not ranting, not joking, just listening. Across from him, a strategist whispered, the next push isn't about truth. It's about doubt. Once the public starts to wonder, you've already won. Trump leaned back, arms crossed, eyes half-lidded with satisfaction. Make them wonder louder. That night, an email chain was quietly passed between media contacts, its contents as vague as it was explosive. Several agencies reviewing Bolton's communications with foreign representatives during his tenure, it claimed. It was unsigned, unattributed, but styled like something real. Within hours, the rumor reached legitimate journalists. Bolton's lawyer called him before dawn. John, you need to prepare. The DOJ isn't investigating, but they might have to say they're not. The phrasing hit him like ice. He wasn't guilty, but now he was a headline waiting to happen. When he finally spoke to his wife that evening, his voice cracked. This isn't about what I did, it's about who I crossed. Across the country, a different voice spoke to a private camera. Trump, recording for his online base, smiled that practiced half-grin. Some people used to work for me, he said. Now they're getting the attention they deserve. He didn't mention Bolton's name. He didn't have to. The silence that followed was the kind that comes before a strike, when the world doesn't yet realize the trap has already closed. By the end of the week, Washington was a storm of whispers. Cable panels dissected Bolton's possible violations, even as every sentence ended with, allegedly. No charges, no facts, just speculation wrapped in confidence. It was the perfect narrative, guilt without proof, drama without risk. Bolton sat in his office surrounded by stacks of printouts, screenshots, emails, transcripts of interviews he never gave. He'd faced dictators, nuclear threats, and international crises, but nothing like this, a war of perception he couldn't out-strategize. His assistant hovered nearby, hesitant to speak. Should we release a statement? She asked. He rubbed his temples. They want me to panic. That's the trap. But his reflection in the darkened window didn't look like a man in control. It looked like someone being erased in real time. Then came the clip. A 20-second video from an old panel resurfaced. Bolton, years ago, criticizing Trump's reckless disregard for constitutional limits. The timing wasn't coincidence. Within minutes, the clip hit every major feed, captioned. Now he's under investigation. Interesting, isn't it? That night, Trump appeared on Fox, his tone almost casual. You know, some people talk a big game about the law, he said, eyes glinting. Then the law talks back. The studio laughed. Bolton didn't. He turned off the TV, sat back, and whispered to no one, he's not just coming after me. He's teaching everyone else what happens if you do the same. The next morning, his phone rang again, not a reporter this time, but an old ally from the intelligence community. The voice was quiet, urgent. John, it's worse than you think. They're not just discrediting you, they're building a case. And for the first time, Bolton didn't argue. He just closed his eyes and said, "Then it's already begun." By Monday morning, it wasn't rumor anymore, it was narrative. Every major outlet carried the same headline phrased in the same deliberate rhythm. Federal sources reviewing Bolton's post-White House activities. There were no sources named, no charges filed, no proof given. But repetition is persuasion, and the repetition was relentless. Bolton's lawyer paced his study, phone pressed to his ear. "John, I've seen setups before," he said. "But this feels orchestrated." Bolton said nothing, just stared at the unopened newspaper on his desk. The ink was still wet, the damage already permanent. Meanwhile, in Florida, Trump was all performance again. Cameras caught him joking with donors, flashing that same grin that never quite reached his eyes. "I don't start fights," he told them. "I finish them." The crowd roared. Behind the laughter, his aide texted him a single update. Bolton scheduled for MSNBC interview Wednesday. He's going to push back. Trump's reply came seconds later. Make him regret it. And they did. Hours before the interview, an anonymous Twitter account dropped a PDF labeled "Bolton Overseas Payments." The file was doctored, but expertly. Numbers, signatures, and dates aligned just enough to look real. Within an hour, it was trending. Producers called Bolton's team in a frenzy. "We can't run you live," they said. "Too hot right now." Bolton's assistant looked pale. "They're freezing you out," she whispered. He nodded slowly, finally understanding. This wasn't a scandal, it was containment. That night, Bolton wrote a single line in his notebook before shutting it tight. When truth is drowned, silence becomes the only crime. Across the coast, Trump watched the chaos unfold and smirked. He thought he was safe, he said softly. Now he knows better. The next 72 hours shattered whatever calm Bolton had left. His name dominated the news cycle like a wildfire no one wanted to put out. Every talk show host, every commentator had an opinion, none had facts. Could this be the end of Bolton's credibility? One headline asked. The question alone was enough to make it true. At dawn, he woke to another blow. His publisher paused the paperback release of his memoir, The Room Where It Happened. Officially, it was for re-evaluation of timing. Unofficially, it was fear. When he called his editor, she sounded apologetic but distant. "You've become politically radioactive, John." The board's nervous. He stared at the phone for a long time after hanging up. Once, he'd been a symbol of authority, now he was a cautionary tale in real time. Every alliance he'd built was evaporating. Lobby groups withdrew offers, universities canceled guest lectures, even his speaking agent stopped answering calls. Meanwhile, Trump went on stage in Michigan, grinning under the spotlight. "I hire the best people," he told the crowd. Sometimes the best just forget who they work for. The roar of laughter shook the rafters. Trump soaked it in like oxygen, each cheer a reminder that dominance didn't require truth, only volume. That night, Bolton tried to record a statement, his own counter-narrative. He sat before the camera, tie slightly loose, voice trembling with fatigue. "I've served this country for decades," he began. "I have nothing to hide." But halfway through, he stopped. His eyes drifted to the lens, the unblinking eye of an audience that no longer cared. He reached forward, turned the camera off, and exhaled into the dark. Somewhere in the digital hum of night, a notification pinged on Trump's phone. A text from his aide. Bolton went silent. Trump grinned, the glow of the screen lighting his face. Exactly as planned. By the next week, Bolton's silence had become its own headline. Cable hosts filled the void with certainty disguised as insight. If he were innocent, one pundit said, he'd be speaking up. Another countered, maybe he's negotiating a deal. Everyone speculated, no one knew. That was the genius of it, truth was irrelevant. Doubt was the weapon now, and it didn't miss. In the echo chambers of social media, the noise took on a life of its own. Memes mocked his mustache. Conspiracy threads claimed he'd been on foreign payrolls for years. One video, edited with eerie precision, showed Bolton shaking hands with diplomats, cut together to imply corruption. It racked up 2 million views in a day. Bolton's daughter called that night, her voice breaking. "Dad, my friends are sending me links. They think you've been arrested." He said nothing for a moment. "That's how it works," he finally answered. "They make you the villain before you even know what you're accused of." Across the ocean of pixels, Trump's digital team monitored engagement charts like battlefield maps. Red spikes marked every time Bolton's name trended alongside traitor or foreign ties. The strategist smiled. "We've hit narrative saturation," he said. "Even if he clears his name, it won't matter." Trump nodded, pleased. "That's the art," he said. "You don't destroy reputations anymore, you dissolve them." Meanwhile, in a quiet DC cafe, a journalist from The Atlantic opened a new message from an anonymous source. Attached were documents, real ones this time, showing how the rumor had been manufactured, seeded, and amplified through shell accounts linked to Trump's PAC. She read the last line twice. He never wanted truth. He wanted silence. And for the first time in days, someone finally understood, this wasn't a scandal. It was a strategy. By midweek, the story shifted, not because of confession or apology, but because of a leak from the other side. The journalist's exposé dropped just after sunrise. Headline: Inside the operation to destroy John Bolton. The first paragraph was surgical. Timestamps, coordination logs, anonymous sources from inside Trump's digital network. Screenshots of emails that read like blueprints for character assassination. Amplify unverified claims. Push until traction. Within hours, the nation erupted again, but this time the current was reversing. News anchors who'd parroted the rumor now leaned back, frowning, correcting themselves in hushed tones. If verified, these findings suggest deliberate manipulation. Words like malicious intent and information warfare returned to the vocabulary they'd abandoned when the story first broke. Bolton watched from his living room, his face lit by the pale glow of vindication, but it didn't feel like victory. His reputation wasn't clean, it was scarred. He'd survived, but the trust he'd once commanded was gone, eroded by millions of impressions that would never be retracted. His lawyer called again. "John, the public's waking up. You could sue. We have precedent." Bolton looked out the window, the Capitol dome distant against a gray sky. "You can't sue a storm," he said. "You can only outlast it." Meanwhile, Trump's team scrambled to contain the fallout. Screenshots vanished, accounts deactivated, statements rewritten. But the digital trail was permanent, copied, archived, immortalized. The strategist who'd once bragged about narrative saturation deleted his profile within hours. That night, Trump logged onto Truth Social, typing with unsteady fingers. Fake news. Another witch hunt. Bolton was always a liar. But the post didn't trend. The country was exhausted, and for the first time in years, people weren't laughing, they were listening. In the silence that followed, the echo chamber cracked. Days later, the frenzy had finally burned out, leaving only smoke, scorched reputations, deleted tweets, and a faint, uneasy quiet over Washington. The same networks that once fueled the chaos now filled airtime with measured retrospectives. What did we learn? They asked, as if the answer wasn't obvious. Bolton sat in front of a microphone again, this time not for a headline, but for a hearing. The Senate had convened a closed session to address the manipulation scandal. Cameras weren't allowed, but words still leaked. He spoke plainly, without theatrics. "The truth," he said, "no longer wins by being right. It wins by surviving long enough to be heard. In Mar-a-Lago, Trump watched the coverage in silence. His aides avoided eye contact. For once, there was no smirk, no swagger. The tactic that had once made him untouchable had turned radioactive. Even his allies now called it a dangerous precedent. One of them muttered, "We built a monster, and it learned to eat us, too." Meanwhile, the journalist who'd broken the story sat alone in her office, scrolling through the comments. For every message of praise, there were 10 of hate. Bots. Trolls. Paid accounts. It didn't matter. The truth had broken through, even if only for a moment, and that was enough. That evening, Bolton walked out of the Senate building into the cool night air. The city hummed around him, unaware that history had just shifted by inches. Reporters called his name, but he kept walking. For the first time in weeks, there was no fear, no noise, just resolve. He paused under the streetlight, adjusted his coat, and whispered to himself. He moved first. But I'm still standing. And somewhere far away, in a world built on headlines and outrage, those words began to echo, proof that even in the age of manipulation, silence could still turn into strength.